Picture this.
A young Nigerian named Osazuwa was sent by his parents to Tokyo in Japan to attend university there a few years back. When he arrived in Tokyo, he made friends with the local Japanese students at his university and, of course, told them his name, Osazuwa. When he did, they looked at him in shock and said to him, "Are you joking? That's a pure Japanese name."
We'll pick up the rest of this story later. To be a good samurai, one must have half-black blood in their veins. 良い時になるためには、血管に半分の黒い血を持つ必要がある. So goes the old Japanese proverb. And as with everything historical that doesn't fit the current narrative, it is dismissed as just that, a coincidence. But when we actually start looking, there is evidence all over of an African seeding of the Eastern civilizations, and it is more obvious when we start to look at the writing system from China. In 1990 BC, the god King Fuxi bestowed onto the land that was to become the empire of the Middle. Government, domestication, cooking, philosophy, rule of law, monument building, as well as kanji, the system writing. These injections of culture set into motion the great wheel that was to become the Empire of China. As its first emperor, we must ask, where did he and the people he belongs to come from? Where did he draw his wealth of knowledge and culture from? Before we go back to the genetic, osteologic, bone studies, cultural, and historical evidence, let us first cover the often ignored evidence of the similarities between Chinese characters and hieroglyphics. And here, the similarities are once more too numerous to attribute to chance. Let us begin with the fact that both writing systems use logograms. These systems of writing use symbols or signs to convey meaning for a whole word. We have seen this before in our video, where we reviewed the evidence that multiple Mesoamerican writing systems have their roots in the Kemetic hieroglyphics. We see the same pattern again here, where a very large number of words can be seen to have the same logos, the same symbols, as the Medu Necher, the Kemetic writing system. These representations and similarities are more pronounced as we go further back in time. See how the representations of sky and sun are virtually identical or similar in roots to their Egyptian counterpart. Also notice how the older version of the Chinese characters look even closer to Medu Necher. In some instances, the symbols are pretty much interchangeable. See the ancient Egyptian logos for child and that of the Chinese, and there are a lot more. If I have enough funding, I would love to commission a cladogram, a phylogenetic study between the Chinese writing system and ancient Egyptian. I think the results would be fascinating. I'll leave the links in the description for you to explore, and if you want to support us in this effort. Further to the identical form and meaning of these characters, Chinese is also written top to bottom, and independent forms of writing that are top to bottom are very rare. But it so happens that hieroglyphics also falls within that category, as it can be written top to bottom, but also left to right and right to left. The Aztec writing system is also top to bottom, but we have already covered in other videos how Mesoamerican civilization were kickstarted by the Africans from Kemet. See our previous episodes on this. A particular aspect of ancient Chinese culture that has endured to this day is the tradition of excellence and artistry in its calligraphy system. The refined calligraphy of the Chinese writing mimics the tradition of perfectionism in writing hieroglyphics. So Chinese writing system didn't just borrow the characters and their meaning from Kemet, but they also inherited its essence and its art. But if ancient Chinese writing is a derivative of hieroglyphics, who brought it to China? And did they bring anything else? Pyramids. Pyramids aplenty. 100 pyramids in the area of Xi in central China. This evidence is very consequential, because soon after the pyramid building experience from Kemet begins, and as black people are shown to be moving east in around 2500 BC, pyramids and mastabas are appearing in central China. At the end of the Second World War, U.S. Air Corps pilot named James Gaussman claimed to have seen a gigantic white jewel-topped pyramid while flying between India and China during World War II. But his statement was kept a closely guarded secret of the U.S. military for 45 years before it became public knowledge. All the way back in the Shia dynasty, China was building pyramids, and some even larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This points to the fact that the leaders at the time had access to a significant amount of labor. That means, even back in this remote period, China already had a large population, probably thanks to the agricultural revolution brought about by the Africans at the top of the Shang dynasty. But the similarities to Kemet don't stop there. The ancient Chinese also practiced mummification. In fact, one of the best preserved mummies is Lady Dai, from the Han dynasty in 206 AD. Or like this 700-year-old mummy discovered by chance in eastern China, we witness the hand of the Africans again. China, just like Egypt, also performed sarcophagus burials for their kings. Just look at these magnificent tombs from Chinese 6th century emperors and compare them to the Egyptian king sarcophagus. Let's remember that the oldest sarcophagus in Egypt dates back to 2613 BC, at the time of the building of the pyramids. So the Kemetic tradition would have been much older, and thus the originator. Ancient Chinese afterlife is also borrowed from the Kemetic concept of afterlife. Ancient Chinese believed that the spirit or soul would continue as they had in life. This mimics exactly what the ancient Egyptian believed and practiced. In fact, just like the Old Kingdom Kemetu, the ancient Chinese nobility would accompany the dead with their servants and slaves, along with other personal belongings, a practice that was later discontinued in Kemet. In Kemet, it was frequent to bury the dead with their board games and their boat. The Egyptians believed that it would help their soul travel to the afterlife. Many ancient Chinese graves had had board games and chariots instead, but the cultural motifs are identical: pyramids, sarcophagus, burying of belongings, vessels for the afterlife. Again, the similarities are too significant to be dismissed, and we can see how the ancient from the Nubio-Kemetic civilization complex, especially its ruling class, sparked the early Chinese civilization. Now let's go back to our earlier story.
A young Nigerian named Osazuwa was sent by his parents to Tokyo in Japan to attend university there a few years back. When he arrived in Tokyo, he made friends with the local Japanese students at his university and, of course, told them his name, Osazuwa. When he did, they looked at him in shock and said to him, "Are you joking? That's a pure Japanese name." And he said to them, "Of course it's not Japanese, I'm from the Edo ethnic group in Nigeria." And the friends looked at him in even greater shock and said to him, "What did you just say your ethnic group was?" He repeated, "Edo." And then they said to him, "You've got to be kidding. Edo is the former name of Tokyo, this city we are in right now. Edo is the former name of Japan. It's also the name of the Edo Empire which reigned over Japan for centuries." Now, the Edo period of Japan was from 1603 to 1867 and was an era of military government. The dynasty was established by military commanders. Osazuwa, or Osa for short, was a history enthusiast, and he asked them who started the Edo Empire in Japan. And they said he was a military commander named Ieyasu. Osa was in total shock. The title of the military commander of the Edo Empire, i.e. the Benin Empire of Nigeria, who was second in power only to the king himself, was Iyase. As they chatted further, one of the Japanese looked up into the night sky and commented on the unusually bright moon, or Tsuki, and also asked him, "What did you just call the moon?" "Tsuki," he replied. And then Osa said, "In Edo, we call the moon Uki." And they looked at him in pure astonishment. And then he added, "Uki is also the name we use for beauty." The Japanese kids stood bolt upright as they screamed, "And Tsuki is the name we also use for beauty." As they wondered aloud in amazement, an elderly Japanese man walked up to them to ask for directions, and the Japanese students greeted him by saying respectfully, "Domo, domo." Osa heard them and nearly fell off his chair. He said, "That's exactly how we greet elders in Edo land. We say, Domo."
Make sure you follow him for excellent coverage of African history narrative. One thing is certain, is that history becomes far more interesting to study when the veil of racism is removed.
有一件事是肯定的，当种族主义的面纱被除去时，研究历史就会变得更加有趣。
For those who can, please consider becoming a Patreon or donating via Buy Me a Coffee or via crypto donations. Even those who donate $1 help us gain access to more paywalled research. This is important because the historical narrative often available online or in printed media rarely covers our truth. Many of the important studies are hiding behind academic subscriptions, and your small donations help me get to these articles that I often cite in my videos.
Check out the link in the comment for the full video, and if you are not subscribed yet, then what are you waiting for?